Well, hello! I was on holiday for a week, and while I was away, growing this beard, and this is just here because it's like, I'm on holiday, make me shave. This arrived. This is the KingKong Fly Egg 130, kindly provided by Gearbest for review, and it was actually delivered into my garden by the lovely folks at Yodel that chucked it over the fence, and sat in the garden in the rain for some days. So thank goodness it comes in this little plastic box, because what I basically had surrounding it was this mush that used to be the cardboard packaging, which was just turned to nothing, and this was safe inside. So it's another micro, a 130 size this time, slightly bigger, runs on 2S. Some interesting little bits about it. First of all, instead of using the normal FlySky compatible controller, it actually uses a FlySky XM, a proper one inside. So let's get out of the box, I'll show you what you get in it. This, by the way, this little sort of sandwich box is a really nice idea. The only thing I wish they did is have the box which was the right size, so when the props are on it actually fits in, because as it is, its props need to come off. Anyway, what you get inside, the manual for the FlySky XM, some prop guards, which is interesting. I don't know if I'm going to fly it inside, but they're there if you want to. Some little rubber bands for batteries, and this little sort of tool for removing props easier. Some little motor protectors. Props, I think you've got two sets, some white ones, some sort of see-through yellowy types. Little USB cable, a LiPo. This is just a free 50 milliamp 2 cell. Kind of lightweight. Instructions for the quad. That's the Chinese side, there is an English side somewhere. And the quad itself, which is really rather lovely, I have to say. There's a nice aluminium section here, very solid. 2.5mm carbon around the sides here. These motors are completely unbranded, but they do look interesting. You can change the angle to the camera. You've got the little XM just underneath here. Rather than the all-in-one camera VTX, the camera's here, the VTX is just on this side bit here, which is interesting. And you've got the normal stack with the sleeve dipole. One interesting thing about the power situation, it actually uses a balance port here, which is a little bit weird. But it's got a rather lovely bit here where it's got this, underneath here, it's got this sort of foam piece which has let the screws sink in, and then the LiPo can sit flush on that foam around one of these little plastic rubber band things. So yeah, it looks pretty. Let's put the props on, let's plug it into beta flight and see what's happening. So this flight controller is a Pico Blocks, or that's the firmware it runs. Never come across this one before. It was on 316, so I upgraded that to 317, just as a matter of course really. This was the modes it was originally set up as, so obviously I changed these to my own liking. And here's the kind of weird bit in the configuration tab. I noticed it was set up to use multi-shot, but it said it should actually support D-shot. So I changed it to D-shot, and I could only get 2 of the motors to spin, so I actually ended up going back to multi-shot. So let's get on with the maiden, and this is literally my first flight, other than a quick hover in the my room actually, which went okay. And here we are just flying in the field, and it looks really good. I have to say it felt really nice and very smooth, which, you know, obviously I liked. That was good news. I also noticed that I thought this camera was just a little bit sharper than a normal all-in-one. Couldn't quite put my finger on it. It just looked a little bit brighter, a little bit sharper, things easier to see, not too much hassle going in and out the shadow as we're doing here. Now, what I actually did in this one is I forgot to change my super rates. So this is all standard PIDs and standard super rates. So the flip and roll situation is a little bit slow for my liking, but again, it's very solid and very easy to fly. It's got a reasonable bit of power now. I did a couple of sort of full throttle climb outs, and that seemed to go okay. And it's got a reasonable little bit of speed on it. This is again the default angle on the camera, which is fairly straight, and because the angle is fairly wide, you can sort of put the nose down to speed up and still get, you know, a pretty good view of everything. And it's still okay around the turns. Here's one of those full throttle climb outs. So it's not like a rocket ship, not ballistic, but you know, it gets up there okay. It's only running a little 2-cell battery, so I think it does pretty well. I had a good old time on these flights, I have to say. Just very, I couldn't quite put my finger on why, but it just came off very easy, and that I liked. Pretty nice made, and I was fairly happy with that. It flew really smoothly. It felt very easy, and that's not to say that the sub 100 quads are hard to fly. I think perhaps they just take they're more active. This was perhaps more floaty, bigger props, and it just seemed to sort of steer around really easily and nice. And the camera seemed a bit sharper as well, which was good. I did notice there was a little bit of oscillation on high throttles, and I'd forgotten to set Super 8, so my rolls were a bit slow. So I thought, let's take it out again, because this is also default camera angle, so I'd like to put that to the next one and just go back in and do a couple of changes on Betaflight. One of which is the battery sensing, because this little 350 almost from the 5-second point was going beep, 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 and even my highest C rating batteries from my Aurora, which are pretty tough, were still beeping. So it seems to me that it's either sensing the voltage wrong, or it's got the wrong value in there for doing the alarm. So I'll sort that out. A little bit of tune on the Super 8s and maybe something else, but I'll have a look at that, set it out now, and let's take it out for another fly, see what happens. So just to explain how to change the camera angle, basically you take one of the side aluminium plates off, and then the camera actually goes in these little sort of preset grooves. So this was the original, and this is what I set it to. Helpfully I took the picture at completely different angles, just so you couldn't tell, but it's a fairly big angle. It's about 40 odd degrees, just eyeballing it. And as far as the VBAT sensing goes, here's the default on 3.5 and 3.3 for the sort of warning and minimum. I changed those to 3.2 and 3. I'm not suggesting you torture batteries like this, but it just seemed like it was coming in too early, so I tried this. Trying to get rid of those oscillations on throttle, I tried the TPA breakpoint, so it was set to 0.10. By default I brought that into 0.4, keeping the TPA breakpoint the same. I don't know if TPA actually has much of an effect these days, but I thought I'd try it anyway. So off we go with the new settings, and it's another day here, and off I'm flying. You can see that the angle's slightly changed because the props are a little bit lower down. It feels like it wants to sort of go a bit more, and it's certainly a lot quicker on the roll and pitch axis. You can really get some very sort of quick flips and rolls there if that's your sort of thing. From my point of view, it was nice that there wasn't anybody walking along the path, so I could just sort of zip around on the trees. The dipole's holding up quite well, but go behind a tree though, and it struggles a little bit more, especially when you really go behind some stuff. Now the camera angle works well when you're pointing the right way, but if you're going sort of flat, there is a slight problem with it, as it tends to point upwards towards the sun, and that will give you a real sort of darkened image on the floor. And you'll see that if you ever want to sort of go quite slowly with the angle that much, or come in for landing where it's like, oh, I'm trying to land on this nighttime place whilst looking up. But great sense of speed again. I mean, it's not super quick compared to how it was. I think the sweet spot is perhaps the angle in the middle. I basically went like 2 or 3 little slots on the camera, so maybe move it back one, just so it's not quite so aggressive. Here's a good example of breakup. I thought I'd just go along here, get behind the tree, see how it goes, and it's like, I'm blind, quick throttle out and see what we got. And you know, I'm just addicted to this sort of trying to find myself a tunnel under the trees. I find it more fun than sort of anything for some reason. I'm just going to have to go back into the woods and try this out again, just for fun. I think it's going to be a fairly good quad for getting through the trees. And as I mentioned, this coming for landing, you can see the sort of darkness of the floor as you come in here. Tricky, but you know, not impossible if you take it nice and slow. Well, conclusion then. I had a lot of fun with this. It's pretty good, isn't it? There's a lot to like about it and there's nothing too bad. So here's what I do like about it. I like this camera. It seems a little bit sharper than the normal all-in-one VTX cams. There's not much in it. My perception was there was something a little bit sharper and it was picking up colours better. It's a little bit subjective to figure out if the camera is better, but if you want to do a comparison, take a look at the last video I did, which is about the Lizard 95 and making it smoother, because I flew this one and that one alternatively, and that's how I noticed flying on this camera. It was just a lot better. It's kind of nice as well that they've broken out the VTX here, although there's a couple of weirdies with it. Instead of having a display here, it actually has these flashing colours. Have a look at this. So the colour it's flashing at the moment, blue and green, means it's on 5740 and there's 16 channels. The downside is you need one of these little guides to see which one of the 16 channels you're on. According to the manual, this has actually got a 100 milliwatt mode as well. It looks like there's a jumper somewhere to solder underneath, but I couldn't be bothered with that. It seems alright in 25. You're not really going to need extra range, although it could be useful behind some trees, you never know. So what else do I like? I like the look of it. I mean, it's not a big deal about how it flies, but I still like the look of it, and it's nicely protected by this aluminium section. I kind of like that the battery sits flush on this little foam piece and doesn't need any sort of velcro to get stuck in. This band's quite nice. The little dipole for the VTX works surprisingly well as well. I do like the way it flies. I can't quite put my finger on what's different about this and sort of the 100, sub 100 frames. This just feels a little bit easier. And for that reason I'm thinking, well, if you're more of a beginner, maybe lean towards this 130 size, maybe over the 95, which is just a little bit easier to fly. I don't know why it's easier to fly, it's just a feeling. It seems a little bit smoother and easier to guide around. Maybe the other ones were always flying a little bit on the edge. That's not to say that you can't fly this quite aggressively. At the moment this camera's up like this, which is possibly a little bit high for this one. I might knock it down one. And you can still do a lot of, you know, rolls, spins, inverted hangs, all sorts. So it does really quite well. As to get rid of that last bit of little vibrations, I'm not sure if it's these props or something else. To be honest, I find it very dull to tune something these days. I just expect it to fly reasonably well and me not have to do much, so I can't really be bothered, and I'm thinking, well, I don't really know much about these props, maybe it's those, who knows. So what could have been improved? Why on earth are they using a balance lead connector here? I think I'm going to have to swap that for a JST. I mean, it worked, there were no brownouts, it just seems really weird. But the biggest thing I'd have liked to have seen in this, which is sadly missing, is the onboard OSD. Now, I don't care about, you know, what my perceived current is or the little artificial horizon thing, but I really like to see my battery voltage and a timer. Without that, I'm having to rely on my radio timer, or that gives me the minute countdown to see what I'm doing. But, you know, I don't always fly the same. Sometimes I'll really be hammering the throttle and it won't last as long. Other times I'll be flying gently and it should last longer, but I'm kind of having to approximate. The beeper as well didn't do brilliantly. I mean, I tuned it down and it was a bit better, and you get out of a decent battery about 3.5–4 minutes. On the other bad news, as per usual, the stock battery I'm afraid is not very good. You might get 3 minutes out of it. It actually went down because it just the power sucked out of it. So this was beeping all the way, even on a reduced setting. So you need something a bit more high C. I'm using this EA Sheen from an Aurora 100. Those work much better, much more sensible. But yeah, enjoyable. I think I'm going to knock the camera down one and continue to fly this as a quite interesting and a sort of nice, I wouldn't say gentle fly, but not quite as crazy as the other ones, because it's just so stable and easy to move around the field. But if you're interested, want to check it out more, there's of course a link below. Be sure to click on that. And I will see you next time. Bye for now.